Hey guys, tonight we walk through the creaky gate of time and follow a path slick with old rain and hoofprints. You're squinting through the gray morning mist as you trudge across a muddy road that was never really built, just worn into the earth by generations of tired feet and wooden wheels. The air smells like wet straw and cabbage. You pass a cart full of manure sloshing with every bump, drawn by a donkey that's barely awake. In the distance, smoke rises from crooked chimneys. You're not a knight, not a merchant, not even a peasant with a pitchfork. You're something different. You're about to start your new job as a court jester, and you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and the local time in the comments. I'd love to know where and when you're listening. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've walked for hours from your village. Your boots are thin, barely more than stitched leather flaps. They squish with every step. Your feet are cold, your toes damp. The morning dew hasn't burned off yet, and each passing minute adds another streak of mud to the hem of your tunic. You're not entirely sure what today holds. You were told to appear before Lord Evermon's court by sunrise. No cart was sent for you, no escort. Just a crudely written summons pressed into your palm 2 weeks ago by a man with bad teeth and too many rings. As you approach the outer wall of the manor, your stomach grumbles. Breakfast was a crust of barley bread with a smear of last month's lard. No time for more. The gatehouse smells like iron and wet dog. A guard in patchwork armor stops you with a flat palm and asks your name. You tell him. He raises an eyebrow and gestures you through with all the enthusiasm of a barn cat. Inside the courtyard bustles with activity that doesn't seem to include you. A boy shovels horse dung. 2 women hang linens over a fence. Someone yells about a stolen chicken. You dodge a flung apple core and finally find the back stairs to the servants' hall. You knock. No answer. You knock again. A door creaks. A thin man with blotchy skin stares at you. He wears a fur cap indoors. His eyes look you up and down. You the fool? You nod. He grunts, then walks away. You take that as your cue to follow. Inside, the walls are dark with soot. The floorboards creak like they're not entirely attached. You pass through kitchens filled with hanging herbs and the pungent stink of pickled onions. A cook swats your shoulder with a ladle for walking too close to her stew pot. The steward finally stops outside a plain wooden door. This is where you wait. Wait for what? He doesn't say. Just vanishes down another corridor. So you wait. Minutes pass, maybe an hour. No window in the hall. Just the smell of roasted leeks growing stronger. You try not to sneeze. At last, a page arrives. His boots are clean. His voice cracks. His lordship will see you now. You stand. Follow. Climb 2 narrow stairwells. Walk past a large chamber echoing with pipe music and giggles. Then into the throne room. Or rather, what passes for one. It's not big. 1 long wooden table, a carved chair at the head, faded tapestries, antlers on the wall. And Lord Evermon. He's younger than you expected. Greasy hair, small mustache, wide smile that doesn't reach his eyes. You're late, he says. You open your mouth to protest, but he waves a hand. No matter. I expect little from fools. He chuckles. No one else does. You bow stiffly. He tilts his head. Can you juggle a trap? But you nod. You pull 3 apples from a bowl and do your best. One bounces off your shoulder and rolls under a bench. The Lord snorts. Good enough. And just like that, you're hired. You don't sign anything. You don't get a tour. Just a nod and a command. Tonight, at supper, you'll entertain us. No instructions, no payment discussed. You're led to the rear wing of the manor and shown to your quarters, a larder with the salted meats pushed aside to make room for a hay-stuffed pallet. The straw pokes through the thin cloth. It smells like damp wool and bacon. You sit. Exhale. Congratulations. You are now a court jester. Historians still argue whether jesters were truly entertainers or more like servants with costumes. The records are inconsistent. Some describe jesters as witty companions to kings. Others suggest they were barely above scullery maids in status, forced to dance for scraps and laughs. You feel more like the second type. Through the thin wall, you hear footsteps. A whip crack. A burst of laughter. Your costume is waiting, laid out on a stool. It's worse than you feared, garish red and yellow stiff with age and sweat. It smells faintly of mildew. There are bells sewn into the sleeves. You lift it, shake it. A spider falls out. There's no mirror in your room, so you dress in the dark, guessing where each limb goes. The tights are too small, the doublet too big. The cap, well, the cap is a disaster. Long flaps hang over your ears with bells at the end. Every movement sets off a jingle. You will not be stealthy. Ever again. Outside, the bells from the chapel chime the late afternoon hour. Your stomach grumbles. Your first performance is coming. And you can't decide what feels worse, the itch from your new costume or the fact that no one has told you what happens if you fail. The only clue comes from a woman you pass in the hallway. She glances at you, laughs quietly, then says, "Try not to cry where they can see." A mainstream fact. Many jesters were considered part of the royal household but weren't always paid in money. Instead, they received food, clothes, and the dubious protection of a noble patron. A fringe tidbit. In one court, a jester was ordered to juggle eggs on a plate balanced on his own head. When he dropped them, he was fined a week's meals. Another time, a fool was made to bark like a dog at night to keep wolves away from the walls. You sit on the edge of your hay pile, adjusting your bells. Your performance is in 1 hour, and you realize something unsettling. You don't actually know any jokes. The hall smells like stewed meat, spilled wine, and wax. You stand just outside the door, peeking through a narrow crack. Torches flicker on stone walls, throwing long shadows across the room. The table stretches almost the full length of the chamber, cluttered with pewter plates, meat bones, half loaves of dark bread, and spilled sauces that glisten in the low light. A roasted boar mouth stuffed with an apple dominates the center. Nobles laugh and chew with open mouths. Someone burps. Someone else sings. Your cue is unclear. A page nudges you. Go on. Now. You jingle with every step. As you shuffle into view, the chatter quiets just a little. Not for long. They've seen fools before. They expect something. Anything. A laugh. A pratfall. A rhyme about the cook's bad teeth. You bow low. Your bells ring too loudly. Then you begin. You juggle a pair of turnips and an onion found behind the roast. You trip on your own foot. They laugh. Not with you. At you. Which, technically, is still a laugh. A noblewoman calls out, "Tell us about the monk and the butter churn." You don't know that one. You try a joke about fleas and fleas fleas. It lands flat. Someone coughs. You launch into a clumsy limerick about a man from Kent. It ends with a rhyme you regret the moment it leaves your lips. Laughter again, but this time from the Lord's hunting dogs as they bark at your jangling sleeves. Lord Evermon waves a leg of lamb in your direction. Fool do a cartwheel, you can't. But you try. Your foot slips. You crash into a stool. The room erupts in howls. Not laughter. Mockery. You lie still for a second, then raise a hand and grunt. That was the joke. They laugh this time. Real laughter. You stand slowly brushing crumbs from your chest. Dignity gone, but for now still breathing. Historians still argue whether jesters were permitted to mock nobles openly or only in indirect satire. Some accounts suggest they were shielded by their roles, others describe fools being lashed for offending the wrong guest. You bow again slower this time. Enough, says Evermon, chewing noisily. You'll do, for now. You're dismissed, not with applause, but with a toss of a gnawed marrow bone that lands near your boot. Back in the kitchen, no one looks at you. You help scrape dishes. That's part of it, apparently. No one told you the job came with chores, but it does. Scraping charred fat from pewter, refilling the ale jug, holding the chamber pot for Sir Bramble, who can't stand after 6 goblets. So, yes, fool, but also errand boy and servant. A mainstream fact. Many medieval jesters were officially recorded as part of the domestic household staff. Their job included not only performing, but also cleaning, delivering messages, and sometimes even standing in for messengers or runners between nobles. You find your way back to your larder room in the dark. Your body aches. Your left knee throbs. The bells still jingle faintly even when you lie down. The cap is impossible to remove without help, so you sleep in it. Morning arrives too soon. You're woken by a bucket dropped nearby. A grumpy scullery maid tells you to fetch water from the well. You carry a wooden pail through a courtyard ankle deep in chicken feathers and horse dung. You slip twice. No one helps. Water splashes into your sleeve. Back inside, someone hands you a broom. No instructions. Just a gesture. So you sweep the main hall and the east corridor. Then the chapel vestibule. You brush away cobwebs while a friar glares at your jester's cap. Not funny, he mutters. You weren't trying to be. Midday, you're told to practice anything. The Lord expects new material. No one tells you what counts. So you hum a tune, try to rhyme, balance a candlestick on your nose. None of it works well. An older servant passes by and says without stopping, "Best laugh at yourself first." Everyone else already is. Later, at the second evening meal, you're summoned again. This time, you recite a clumsy poem about the cook's pickled eggs. They laugh too much. Probably because the cook is standing right behind you. She throws a wooden spoon. It hits your shoulder. They laugh even more. After supper, you're assigned to polish boots, 7 pairs, mud-crusted. One smells unmistakably of goat urine. You begin to realize you're not just here for jokes. You're here to serve, in every humiliating way. A fringe tidbit. In 14th century Burgundy, a court jester named Renard was tasked with not only performing during feasts, but also with carrying chamber pots between noble bedrooms. He reportedly joked that he carried more royal secrets than scrolls. You try to keep your spirits up, but your boots are still wet from yesterday. Your socks have not dried, and your hands are raw from scrubbing with lye soap. When night falls, your room feels colder. The salted meat beside your straw pile has begun to rot. You push it aside. A rat eyes you from the far corner. You both stare. You blink first. You wonder if there's anyone less respected in the entire manor. Maybe the guy who shovels the latrines. Actually, he got a roast bone from the cook yesterday. So maybe not. Morning begins before the sun rises. You're already awake, listening to the sounds of hooves clopping in the courtyard and someone sharpening knives in the kitchen. You sit up slowly, your joints creaking like a splintered bench. The cap you wore to sleep has left lines across your forehead. The bells jingle with every move, a quiet reminder that even in rest you are never off duty. Today, they hand you the full costume, not the patchwork tunic from yesterday. No. This is the official outfit, the one meant for banquets, visiting nobles, and festival days. It hangs on a peg in the laundry room, if you can call a smoky, dripping stone cell a laundry room. You stare at it for a full minute. The fabric is bright, stitched in diagonal slashes of crimson and ochre. Someone long ago thought this combination looked festive. It doesn't. It looks like blood and pus. You lift the trousers. Their wool scratchy even through your calloused fingers. The seams are thick and there are patches over both knees, though not symmetrical. The doublet is heavier than expected, stiff with old sweat. When you pull it over your head, the collar snags on your ear. A dry flea drops from the sleeve. You flick it away. And then there's the cap. This isn't the soft, lopsided nightcap from before. This is a full jester's coxcomb. 3 pointed flaps hang from the crown, each sewn with a small copper bell. The bells are not ornamental. They ring. Loudly. Always. You put it on. The chin strap itches. The seams dig into your scalp. You look in a piece of warped bronze that passes for a mirror. You don't see a performer. You see a warning. A mainstream fact. The jester's costume evolved into a specific ensemble over centuries. By the late Middle Ages, the 3-pointed hat symbolized a donkey's ears and tail, further emphasizing the fool's symbolic role as the ass of the court. The motley pattern patches of contrasting fabric was not decorative, but signaled low status. You make your way through the hall, every step marked by bells. The nobles hear you before they see you. You jingle through the kitchen. The scullery boy smirks. One cook mutters something about dinner, already laughing at itself. At breakfast, Lord Evermond gestures for you to stand still and look amusing. So you stand near the hearth, not speaking, not moving much, just jingling. Occasionally, someone tosses a bit of bread at you. You're not supposed to eat it. It's part of the game. An hour later, you're called to the wardrobe room. Apparently, the outfit needs adjusting. A woman with 3 teeth and sharp pins sticks you in 5 places while muttering about how fat your shoulders are. She tugs the fabric tighter, ignoring your flinches. You return to your room to find your old clothes gone. They've taken them. You are now the fool full time. You ask someone, a steward maybe, if there's a place to wash the costume. He laughs. Wash it. No need. It'll be replaced once it rots off. You're not sure if he's joking. Historians still argue whether jesters were considered sacred fools or disposable pets. Some chronicles depict them as deeply valued confidants. Others write of them being discarded without ceremony once their usefulness waned or their humor dried up. You begin to notice things. No one bows to you. No one shares wine with you. You are both invisible and inescapable. You're in every room, yet belong to none. Later that day, the Lord's nephew challenges you to a race around the dining table. He's 12. You lose. On purpose. He crows with laughter. You trip theatrically and land near the dog. It growls. You pat its head. It bites your sleeve. The boy claps. Do it again. You do. The dog doesn't miss. A fringe tidbit. In the court of Edward I of England, one fool named Roland was trained to imitate barking dogs during mealtimes to amuse the king. Records show Roland eventually lost part of his left ear when a hound took his impression too literally. Evening comes, and with it another performance. You recite a rhyme about a monk who drank too much ale. Mild laughter. A baroness spits her wine. You pretend it was the plan. You're starting to understand how to time the room. Make the joke about the wine after it spills, not before. Mock the priest after the prayer, not during. Poke fun at the cook when she's already laughing, not when she's holding a cleaver. But every gesture costs something. The costume grows heavier with sweat. The bells pull on your neck. The cap presses on your temples. And always you feel that watching, that waiting. One misstep, one wrong word, and your role will change from amusement to example. You clean up after the meal. The floors are sticky with grease. The nobles leave bones, half-eaten pies, and the occasional goblet for you to collect. You work in silence. No one thanks you. Your costume is now soaked around the collar. Your knees ache from kneeling. Your hands smell like fish. A servant hands you a basin. The Lord's hound fouled the stairs. You don't ask which ones. You find it by scent. You scrub. By the time you return to your room, it's past midnight. You collapse onto the straw pile. You try to remove your cap. The strap won't budge. You give up. The bells chime softly as you shift. Outside, an owl hoots. Inside, your thoughts run slower. The costume isn't funny, and you're starting to believe the joke was never yours to tell. By the third week, you learn to dread the dinner hour. It begins long before the food is served. The kitchen smells of dripping tallow and singed feathers. Boiling pots clatter as cooks shout over each other. Someone is always dropping a ladle or slapping a scullion. You try to stay out of the way, but there's no hiding. Not when you wear bells. You're handed a platter of pickled turnips. You don't know where it's supposed to go, but you carry it anyway. A boy snatches it from you halfway down the hall. No one says thank you. Then comes the setup. Candles lit. Platters carried out. Goblets placed precisely on stained cloth. The table is long, but your space is never set. You do not eat at the table. You hover. You stand near the fire. Not too close. Nobody wants you sweating on the guests. You're told to look lively, which seems to mean smiling with your mouth shut. Soon they arrive. Boots scrape. Chairs groan. Laughter erupts before anything is said. One nobleman arrives already drunk, another with his hunting hawk still on his arm. You wonder if he knows it pooped down his cloak. Lord Everman enters last. Always. His beard is trimmed, his fingers glitter with rings. His smile is for show. He waves. Your cue. You step forward. You bow, bells chiming. Let us be amused, he declares, or fed, whichever happens first. And so it begins. The servants bring food first. Loaves, torn stew, ladled fowl carved right at the table. Grease runs down hands and chins. Napkins are ignored. The air thickens with meat and spilled ale. You are told to entertain between courses. Not during. Never during. Your voice, your jokes, your rhymes, these are like parsley on the side. Decorative. Optional. But failure to please is not. Tonight you try something new, a tale of a knight who fell in love with a cow, mistaking it for a maiden. It earns a few chuckles, a few more when you imitate the cow's voice. But not from the Lord. He stares expression flat. So you abandon the story. Quickly, you sing a song instead. Something about a barber who shaved a friar bald and claimed his scalp was holy. The Baron snorts. His lady swats his arm, but she's smiling. Then the food returns. You step back. You wait. Someone drops a leg of goose. You fetch it. Another spills wine. You mop it. A mainstream fact. Medieval courts often treated jesters as part of the dinner entertainment, much like musicians or dancers. However, unlike the others, jesters had to remain alert and adaptable, switching roles from comic to servant to scapegoat without warning. Someone gestures for you. You hurry over. The Baron wants you to imitate the old steward. You hesitate. The steward is watching. But you do it anyway. Hunched posture. Squeaky voice. It lands well, except with the steward. You're slapped behind the head as you pass by him 10 minutes later. That was not funny, he says. You don't respond. Not allowed. Later, another request. A rhyme about the visiting abbot. You keep it clean. You make his sandals the punchline. It's fine. Everyone laughs except the abbot. You've learned laughter is currency, but some coins cost more than others. By now, the food's mostly gone. Bones litter the floor. The dogs fight under the table for scraps. A pie has collapsed sideways on a plate. You're called back again. Lord Evermon leans on his hand. You haven't juggled tonight, he says. You weren't planning to, but you nod. You pick up 3 pears, overripe, slippery. The first toss is fine, the second okay. The third, splat. Pear pulp across your chest. They roar with laughter. You juggle the 2 remaining. A dog eats the third. Someone throws you a wine goblet. You try to catch it. It breaks. Now you're bleeding. Just a little. Thumb nicked. You hide it in your sleeve. The show must go on. A fringe tidbit. The fool Triboulet, court jester to Francis thus of France, once slapped the king on the backside in jest. The king, furious, promised death. Triboulet begged for mercy and was told he could choose how to die. He answered, of old age. He was exiled instead. You wonder what you would choose. After the final course dessert is brought a molded pudding shaped like a castle. The cook beams with pride. You are told to make a pun about it. You have nothing. Your brain is slow tired. You mumble, "Looks like the Lord's fortress after wine." It's not very funny. No one laughs. Evermon frowns. A priest murmurs something. You bow and retreat. Later in the scullery, you're handed a mop. You bombed, the scullery maid says. Try flatter jokes. They like flattery. You mop slowly. The pudding joke sticks in your mind. You repeat it quietly. Still not funny. Back in your room, you remove the cap. Finally. The bells fall silent. The costume lies in a heap. It smells like onions and embarrassment. You lie back. Stare at the ceiling. There's a crack above your head shaped like a chicken or a bishop's hat. You can't tell. Tomorrow is another supper. And you have to be funnier, or cleaner, or quieter. Maybe all three. Historians still argue whether court jesters ever enjoyed real freedom, or if their every laugh was weighed against danger. Some records show jesters mocking popes, others dying for jokes about taxes. You close your eyes, you try to sleep, but your fingers still twitch in time with invisible juggling. And somewhere down the corridor, someone is still laughing. You're not sure if it's at you or about you. Your days now begin with a checklist in your head. Juggle something, polish something, get laughed at, don't get whipped. That's the rhythm now. A quiet, mental chant to keep the hours from blending into an unbearable smear. You wake up with straw in your mouth and stiffness in your back. You stretch carefully. Your left shoulder still aches from last night's tumble off the hearth. The bells on your cap chime as you sit up. You're not sure if you slept in the cap again or if someone put it back on while you slept. Either is possible. No one knocks when they want you. They just shout. Fool, to the buttery you go. Turns out you're meant to carry barrels. Small ones, but still. You lug a cask of ale down 3 flights of uneven stairs. At the bottom, your heel catches. You nearly fall. No one helps. Instead, the steward says, "That would have been funnier if you'd landed on your head." You nod, smile slightly, and go back for another barrel. By midday, you're told the bishop is visiting. Not the chatty one who smells like cloves. This one frowns at dogs and preaches sermons twice as long as the meal. You're warned no jokes about clergy today. None. But still, you're expected to perform. So you prepare. You try to remember rhymes that don't mention sins, beer or belly aches. There aren't many. Every fool's story eventually touches on gluttony or hypocrisy. It's part of the humor. The bishop arrives just before dinner. His robe is stiff with embroidery. He carries a book he doesn't open. His nose is sharp, his eyes sharper. You're already standing by the fire when the guests take their seats. The table is quiet at first. No one wants to be the first to laugh. You do a simple trick balancing a spoon on your nose. It wobbles. It falls. You make a fart noise as it hits your boot. Mild chuckles. Then the bishop clears his throat. Dead silence. You pivot. Literally. You spin in place and act like it was part of the act. Someone coughs. The Lord smiles slightly. You begin a poem about geese. It goes well until the last line rhymes feather with leather. That sets off the falconer who thinks you're mocking his gloves. You're not. But it's too late. He narrows his eyes. The bishop frowns again. You switch gears. A pantomime next. You pretend to be a drunk pig. You snort, stagger, knock over a stool. The bishop sighs, loudly. Lord Evermon waves. That's enough, pig. Do the one with the fish. You don't remember the fish one. You stall. Which fish, my lord? He grins. The ugly one, like my wife's cousin. You pause. The cousin is present. She glares at you. This is the game. Make the joke offend her, earn his laughter. Skip it and offend him. So you make the joke. It's not clever. Something about scales and sour faces. The cousin throws a grape at you. It hits your cap. The bells ring. They laugh. You bow. Inside, you're empty. A mainstream fact. Many medieval nobles used jesters as a form of social leverage, testing political waters, mocking rivals, or simply humiliating others with plausible deniability. The fool said it, not the Lord. You're called back during dessert. This time the bishop himself speaks. Fool, tell us what you think of our company tonight. A trap. You stall. Like stew, your grace warm, fragrant, and improved with a pinch of salt. They laugh. Even the bishop smiles faintly. You breathe again. You spend the rest of the evening standing near the door, ready for more commands. A dog lies on your foot. You don't move. The warmth is welcome. Later, back in the scullery, you're scrubbing goblets. You hear the steward say, "He did well tonight." Nobody cried. Another replies, "The bishop still wants him flogged for that pig bit." They both laugh. You scrub harder. Historians still argue whether jesters truly wielded influence or were simply tolerated distractions. Some sources name fools as royal advisors. Others depict them being thrown out of castles for the wrong pun at the wrong time. Before bed, you pass the falconer. He doesn't speak. He just drops something at your feet. You wait until he's gone. It's a piece of raw pigeon, a warning or a gift. You're not sure. You feed it to the kitchen cat. Your room feels colder tonight. Your straw has molded in one corner. You move your blanket. A beetle scurries out. You lie down in the other direction. The bells hang on a nail beside you. You stare at them. You think of jokes about silence. None of them are funny. A fringe tidbit. In 13th century Germany, a jester named Hans Wurst was known for his grim humor. He reportedly ended one feast by lying down in a coffin and pretending to be dead, claiming he was tired of pretending laughter. You wonder how long he lasted after that. The laughter always fades. But your job never ends. You fall asleep to the sound of dripping water in the wall, and your dreams are empty of applause. You stop expecting applause. That helps. Instead, you start to measure success by other signs. If the Lord doesn't yawn while you speak, that's a victory. If the stew ladle isn't thrown at your head during your limerick, you call that progress. If no one makes you clean pig pens in the middle of your act, that's an excellent night. Tonight, the court is restless. A new guest has arrived. He wears silk even though it's damp outside. His boots shine. His laugh is too loud and too frequent. You learn quickly he's Lord Evermon's cousin, a man of titles and land with no visible use to anyone. Yet everyone bows too low when he enters. You are told to make him smile. No one says how. The meal begins with thick broth too salty, filled with lumps of carrot and something that might have once been duck. The nobles slurp. The guest dabs his lips and winces. You try a story about a donkey who became mayor. You've used it before. It lands half the time. Tonight it sinks. The cousin raises an eyebrow. That's it, he says. You nod. Smile. Shrug like it's part of the joke. He leans toward Evermon. I've seen better fools on the street. You keep smiling. Your face starts to ache. Evermon shrugs. He grows on you. The cousin smirks. Mildew does too. The hall erupts with laughter. Not yours. They're not laughing with you. They're laughing at you. And you let them. Because you have to. Later, you drop a line in your poem. You stutter, correct it, keep going. But it's too late. The cousin slaps the table. He's broken you. Mime winding yourself up like a toy. That gets more chuckles. The joke's on you. Again. A mainstream fact. The jester's entire purpose in court was to absorb discomfort, to turn tension into comedy. Many nobles considered the fool a buffer, a walking pressure valve for frustration, insult, and humiliation. You keep moving. You switch to juggling. This time it's wooden spoons. One hits your nose. Not planned. Your eyes water. The cousin cheers. Later, you're told to escort the guest to the guest chambers. You're not offered a lantern. The corridor is long, cold, and smells of damp wool. The cousin says nothing for most of the walk. Then he stops, turns to you. Do you like it here? You pause. It feeds me. He chuckles. So does Swill, but Swill doesn't pretend it's soup. He walks off. You return to the kitchen. You mop the floor. Someone's spilled something sticky. It pulls at your soles as you walk. The cook mutters, "He'll want you in the morning, you know." The cousin. They always do. They ask to borrow the fool for a hunt, a ride, a bath. You'll be lucky if you come back with your teeth. You don't answer. You already know. Historians still argue whether jesters were legally considered property of the court. Some records suggest they could be lent, traded, or even gifted between nobles, often without their consent. You try to sleep. But the room is colder than usual. Your blanket is damp. Your straw is flat. You lie on your side, listen to the wind outside. And then the bell. The cousin sends for you. You arrive in the great hall just before dawn. The fire is low. He stands by the window in his nightshirt, holding a cup of something steaming. Tell me something true, he says. You blink. True. Yes. A truth. Something real. Something unfunny. You hesitate. Then say, "My boots are full of holes. I can feel the floor through them." He laughs. That's not funny. You nod. He waves you away. Later, you tell no one about it. Some things don't need to be jokes. You resume your chores. The day continues. No one asks if you slept. You didn't. A fringe tidbit. In 15th century Spain, a court fool named Perico was given a silver coin for every night he stayed awake to amuse a sleepless nobleman. After 21 nights, Perico collapsed and died mid-laugh. The nobleman reportedly clapped. You think of that story as you scrub chamber pots. You think of it again as you're called back to dinner. The cousin's still here. You wonder what he'll ask tonight. You smile anyway. That's what they expect. You're called earlier than usual. A page knocks on the wall outside your quarters, not the door, the wall, and says, "The Lord wants Jest at second bell." You nod, even though the page is already walking away. You've barely eaten. A crust of bread, dry and cracked. Some water from a clay cup with a hairline fracture near the rim. No meat. No cheese. No time. You pull on the costume. The fabric resists. The seams are tired like you. The cap slides down your brow. One bell doesn't jingle anymore. It's rusted shut. That seems appropriate. Tonight, the hall is full. A foreign delegation has arrived. They wear long cloaks, silver belts, and small knives sheathed at their ribs. Their boots are clean. Too clean. Probably not from around here. You're told to open the meal with a verse. Something noble-sounding but funny. A contradiction that offers no help. You stand in the shadows as they bring in the bread. Loaves the size of small dogs crusted with seeds. Steamed vegetables arranged into towers. A roasted bird, maybe pheasant, maybe not, garnished with violets. Lord Everman sits straighter than usual. The foreign guests speak in clipped phrases. You can't catch every word. Their dialects are strange, their laughter reserved. And then your cue. Evermon claps twice. You walk forward. All eyes turn. This part always feels longer than it is. The walk across the flagstones. The silence just before you speak. The knowledge that one wrong syllable, one misjudged jest, could turn everything. You begin. A short rhyme about diplomacy and soup. It gets a polite laugh. You follow with a fable an owl who outwitted a fox by pretending to be asleep. There's a pause. Then chuckles. One of the guests even taps the table softly. Success, maybe. Then Evermon says, "Now do the one about the king's beard." You freeze. That joke. It ends with the king's beard catching fire during prayer. It's not about our king, but the visiting one. Your eyes meet Evermon's. He knows. That's the test. Say no and you disobey. Say yes and you risk offense. You clear your throat. You adjust your cap. And you begin. You soften the punchline. You leave out the part about the priest fainting. You replace the king with a lord. It still gets a reaction. A slow nod from one of the visitors. A hand over a mouth suppressing a laugh or a yawn, no way to tell. But you're not dead. So it worked. For now. A mainstream fact. Jesters were often used to test the waters of political commentary. Nobles could voice veiled opinions through jokes gauging reactions without taking direct responsibility. If a guest laughed, it was harmless. If not, the fool took the fall. After the main course, you're dismissed for a while. You wait near the door. The foreign guests speak among themselves. Their language is still thick, still foreign. You hear your name once, then laughter. You don't ask what was said. Later, Lord Everman calls you over. He's flushed from drink. His fingers drum the table. "Mock me," he says. You hesitate. He grins. "Go on. Do your best." You try. You joke about his appetite, his boots, his collection of dried beetles. People laugh. He does too. Then stops. Too far, he says softly. You bow. Forgive me, my lord. He waves his hand. You can't tell if you've been excused or warned. Historians still argue whether jesters were truly protected by their lords or simply tolerated until they made a fatal mistake. Court records are vague, with some noting fools suddenly vanishing after unpopular performances. You leave the hall quietly. Back in the scullery, you're given a stack of linens. Wash these, says the laundress. Use the cold water. The firewood's low. Your fingers sting in the chill. Soap doesn't foam in cold water. It just smears. You scrub anyway. One cloth has blood on it. You don't ask why. A fringe tidbit. In 14th century Florence, a fool named Pietro was made to perform his act while washing the city guards' uniforms. If he stopped juggling while rinsing, he was beaten. He developed a routine using soap bars as props. You try to imagine juggling soap. You slip just thinking about it. The floor is wet. The bells on your cap are heavy. Your shirt sticks to your back. The hall above you rings with music. You are not invited. By the time you return to your room, it's long past midnight. The straw smells mustier than before. The rat doesn't even scurry now. It just watches you as though daring you to complain. You lie down, arms crossed, staring at the low wooden beams. You count your breaths. You try not to remember how close that joke came to being your last. You try to forget the sound of polite foreign laughter. You try to imagine silence. You wake before the light returns. Someone dropped a pot in the corridor again. The echo rolls through stone like a drumbeat. You sit up slowly, shoulders tight. Your cap is beside you, curled slightly from last night's damp. You pick it up, brush off a beetle, and place it on your head like a crown that belongs to someone else. You're summoned before breakfast. A runner tells you to appear in the solar. That's unusual. The solar is for quiet talks, for privacy, not laughter. You arrive still in your costume. The steward eyes your bells, but says nothing. Inside, Lord Evermond sits with a cup of spiced wine. His cousin is there again, reclining half asleep, yet watching. You're to carry a message, Evermond says, to Lady Brenneth. You nod. She's staying at Hartwell Manor. Half a day's ride. You nod again. He tosses you a small scroll tied with blue thread. You'll deliver it and perform. Light material only. She dislikes dark humor. You know nothing of her, but that's expected. You set off on a borrowed mule. The path winds through low hills and muddy trails. The mule stops often, at puddles, at shadows, once for no reason at all. You ride in full costume. The hat, the bells, even the shoes. By midday you arrive. Hartwell Manor is smaller, cleaner. Less noise, more lavender in the air. You announce yourself. The servant who greets you looks you up and down with restrained amusement. Right this way, she says, like guiding a puppy to its bath. Lady Brenneth sits near a window, embroidering something red and green, possibly a bird, possibly a bushfire. She accepts the scroll without comment. Then gestures. Perform. You start with a rhyme. She doesn't look up. You juggle 3 walnuts. One rolls under the table. You retrieve it. She still says nothing. You tell a short tale of a fish who learned to walk just to escape bad singing underwater. She blinks once, then says, "You may stop." You bow. She doesn't return the gesture. You are fed bread and lentils. That's generous. You eat outside, sitting on a stone bench under a fig tree. The breeze feels different here, quieter. But you don't stay long. You're told to leave before the sun dips. The mule is less willing on the return. You arrive after dark. Evermon is waiting in the great hall. "Well, she received it," you say, and she did not laugh. He smiles. She never does. You are dismissed with a wave. Historians still argue whether jesters were ever truly part of diplomacy. While records show fools sent as messengers, it remains unclear if their performances were symbolic, strategic, or simply convenient entertainment on the road. You shuffle back to your room. Your knees crack. Your boots are damp again. And your reward, a cracked carrot and a wink from the kitchen maid. Later, you're sent to deliver another performance. This time, it's not a message. It's gossip. You're told to recite a rhyme at supper tomorrow, a rhyme that includes a jab at Sir Marden's hunting failures. Lord Everman insists. But Marden is a drinker, a short-tempered one. You try to refuse. "I'm not sure he'll take it well, my lord." Everman grins. That's the fun. You memorize the rhyme anyway. You recite it softly in your room, adjusting the inflection, softening one line, sharpening another. The next night, you stand before the table again. You're introduced with a snap of fingers. No title, no name, just the fool. You begin. The rhyme about Marden's arrow and the duck that laughed as it flew. It rhymes pluck with stuck. It references his last hunt, the one where no game returned but a goose chased the squire into a pond. They laugh. Marden's face does not. You bow. He stands. He walks slowly to the hearth and hurls his cup into the fire. No words. But the silence is thick. A mainstream fact. While jesters were often given verbal freedom, the line between safe and suicidal humor could shift without notice. Jokes that succeeded one night might fail the next, depending on wine pride or wind. That night, you're not called to clean. You're told to remain in your quarters. That's more ominous than it sounds. No one says if you're in trouble. No one says if you're safe. You lie down in your costume, just in case. The bells press against your ear. You dream of ducks, and arrows, and silence. The next morning, Marden is gone. No word, no confrontation. Just a note on the steward's ledger. Departed. You're not mentioned. But you don't joke about hunts anymore. A fringe tidbit. In one 12th century court, a jester named Corbin was stabbed during supper for mocking a lord's stutter. No charges were filed. The lord claimed he thought it was part of the act. You learn to weigh each word now. You test jokes against imaginary outcomes before speaking them. If you can imagine your own bruised ribs at the end of a verse, you save it for another night, or never. Tonight you juggle silence. You smile through caution, and your audience laughs anyway. But you don't. Not inside. Not anymore. It's a cold morning. Your breath fogs in the hallway as you sweep ash from the hearth. The broom is missing half its bristles. You hold it sideways to keep it from wobbling. The smoke from last night's fire still clings to the stone, and the soot finds your sleeves, your cuffs, your neck. You've stopped trying to stay clean. Today there's competition. You notice it before the midday bell. A wagon arrives in the courtyard painted blue, trimmed in gold leaf with wheels that don't squeak. That alone is suspicious. Two men hop down, one tall and thin with a silver flute, the other broader, bare-chested despite the chill. He carries a sack that clinks. The steward doesn't announce them, just nods and moves aside. They're here for the feast. You hear their bells before you see their faces. Not like yours. Yours are copper muted with grime. Theirs are polished bronze. One jingle is crisp, high precise, musical. They're not fools. They're performers, troubadours, or jesters for hire, traveling acts. Tonight you share the stage. You're not told ahead of time. You learn when you walk into the hall and see them already standing near the fire juggling flame-colored scarves. You nod politely. They ignore you. One spins a plate on a stick. The other plays a quick tune on his flute. Guests clap softly. You wait in the shadows. You're summoned after the pie course. You step forward, boots squishing. The floor hasn't been cleaned. No one asked you to. You deliver a limerick. It lands well. Then the taller visitor jokes about your hat. The hall laughs louder. You smile, nod. He steps beside you, tells a story about a fool who danced so badly the rats left the cellar. He points at you. More laughter. You play along. What else can you do? A mainstream fact. Permanent court jesters often found themselves upstaged by traveling performers. While the resident fool was part of the furniture, the outsider brought novelty, and novelty always wins short-term attention. Later, the steward tells you not to perform the rest of the evening. They've got it handled. You return to the scullery. The new men dine with the nobles. You eat with the laundry. Bread, thin broth, a rind of cheese that smells like feet. You chew slowly. The fire is warm at least. You pretend the bread is meat. It isn't. You hear laughter echoing through the stone halls. It's not yours. That night the visitors sleep in guest rooms. You pass them briefly. They don't recognize you out of costume. You nod. One spits over the balustrade, not at you, but near. In the morning they leave. Evermon waves lazily from the doorway. Good show, he says, then glances at you. You're still here, I see. You bow. He walks away. You return to your duties. The stew pot needs scrubbing. The benches need wiping. The laundry needs sorting. Your hands are red from soap. Your cap is heavier. You hang it near the hearth to dry. One of the bells falls off. You pocket it. A fringe tidbit. A jester named Donko in 15th century Bohemia once challenged a traveling fire-eater to a contest of wit. The fire-eater set his sleeve alight mid-performance. Donko beat him unconscious with a loaf of bread. The crowd applauded. Both were dismissed by nightfall. That story feels more real now. You wonder how long novelty lasts, and how long until someone new replaces you. You prepare your act carefully the next day. You polish your shoes. You try a new rhyme, one about a barrel and a bishop and a bee. It's fine. The Lord chuckles. A servant snorts. That's enough. Not applause, but survival. That's your standard now. Historians still argue whether jesters experienced rivalry or camaraderie. Some scrolls tell of dueling fools, others of brotherhoods, guilds of jesters who shared routines, tricks, even lodging. You've never met another who stayed long enough to share a joke. They pass through. They collect coin. They vanish. You remain, because you have no wagon, no flute, no gold-trimmed jacket, just bells and words and a costume no one wants to borrow. The next time a wagon arrives, you don't look. You clean the corner of the fireplace. You fix the loose strap on your boot. You rehearse your best lines, just in case someone still wants them. You sit alone in the pantry corridor between a barrel of onions and a mop that won't stand upright. The corridor smells of mildew and vinegar. The stone wall behind you sweats cold. You're stitching the tear in your sleeve with thread borrowed from the laundry maid. Your fingers are clumsy. You were never trained to sew. You were never trained at all. That becomes clearer every day. There was no jester school, no lesson in timing or wordplay, no apprenticeship under a seasoned fool who passed down tricks of the trade. You learned by watching failing recovering. You still do. Everything you know came from songs, half-remembered gossip overheard in taverns, or stories exchanged on muddy roads. Some tales you reshaped, others you stole. Your act is patchwork, like your tunic, and that's the problem. Tonight, Lord Evermon requests something new. He's grown tired of your usual rotation. No more duck stories, no more rhymes about misfiring crossbows. Nothing involving chamber pots, goats, or bad breath, though those usually land well. Impress me, he says, or try harder. That's your warning. You spend the day thinking. You try to write something original. Your quill is a splintered reed. Your ink is diluted. Your desk is your knee. Still, you manage a short ballad, a tragicomic tale of a knight whose armor shrank every time he told a lie. By the end, he's naked in the marketplace, chased by nuns. You test the rhythm out loud. It needs work. You practice juggling with apples. One is too soft. It splits. You eat it. Dinner arrives too soon. The torches in the great hall flicker blue with smoke. The crowd is smaller tonight. Just the local nobles. No visitors. No traveling performers. That means the attention is more focused. That means more risk. You begin your performance with the ballad. It works. Mild laughs at first, then chuckles when you act out the knight wriggling inside his shrinking breastplate. A louder laugh when you mime the nun's expressions. You even get a snort from the steward. Lord Evermon sips his wine and watches, but he does not laugh. You try your next piece, a pantomime involving a sheep, a hat, and a case of mistaken identity. It lands, mostly, but not with the Lord. You feel the air shift. You jingle too loudly when you bow. He waves a hand. That's enough. You retreat. Later, the steward finds you near the cellar. Simpler jokes, he says. They don't want fables. They want falling. You nod. You understand. A mainstream fact. Many jesters created their material through instinct and necessity. There were no formal scripts or standardized routines. Their acts were cobbled together from memory observation and desperate improvisation. You sit on the kitchen step, chin in your hand. You think of the jokes that worked best. The pratfall into the gravy bowl. the song about the priest's wig, the limerick that ends with a burp. Those earned more laughter than any carefully crafted story. But they leave you hollow. Anyone can fall. Anyone can get slapped. You want more. You won't get it. Historians still argue whether jesters were ever respected as creative artists. Some chronicles refer to them as poets and playwrights. Others list them alongside livestock and household tools. You return to your quarters. Your legs ache. You drop onto the straw pile and stare at the ceiling. There's a new draft tonight. It whistles under the door. Your costume hangs nearby. It's faded now. The red has turned to rust, the yellow to smoke. You remember the first time you wore it, how foolish you felt. You still do, but now you wear it better. A fringe tidbit. In 14th century France, a jester named Rollo performed an entire act in silence, using only facial expressions and small props. He received a coin purse from the queen. The next night, he repeated the act and was beaten for mocking the court's intelligence. You think of trying a silent routine, just once, but you won't. Not here. Not now. Silence doesn't echo in these halls. Only laughter, or its absence. Rain drums on the slate roof like fingers tapping a slow rhythm. You listen as you peel off your socks crusted with mud from the afternoon. You spent 3 hours outside following the hunting party not as a hunter, but as entertainment. You were there to keep spirits up, which mostly meant falling in the mud, fetching arrows, and being the butt of jokes louder than the hounds barking. Your legs are sore. Your feet are blistered. You smelled something dead before you saw it 2 days gone, bloated flies circling. A boar that escaped one trap only to perish in the bramble. The steward laughed when you gagged. Now you sit on the edge of your straw bed tugging at your stained sleeves. They won't come off easily. The rain continues. And you're coughing again. That's new. The damp in your room lingers. The window doesn't close properly, and the cloth you stuffed in the crack is soaked through. You shiver. You wrap your cloak tighter. It smells of turnip and wax. You've started hearing stories. People whisper near the fire when they think no one listens. Of spots, boils, a fever that doesn't break. Of carts rolling through towns with men ringing bells, not like yours, but slower, heavier, tolling. You don't ask questions. Questions aren't for fools. You perform. That's your place. A mainstream fact. The 14th century saw waves of the Black Death sweep across Europe, claiming millions. In many courts, fools were expected to continue performing even as servants, nobles, and family members died around them. Their laughter was considered a necessary shield against despair. You notice fewer people at supper. Not dramatically fewer, but fewer. A knight hasn't come back from the village. One of the kitchen maids coughs more than you. The cook has replaced her with her niece. You're told not to speak of it. Just perform. So you do. You open with a song. You add a cough for comic effect. They laugh. They think it's part of the act. You tell a joke about a peasant and a goat who wore matching boots. It lands. Then you rhyme about a monk who tried to bless a beehive. That one earns claps. You bow. Lord Evermond nods. But his smile is slow to arrive. You're dismissed early. The meal ends quietly. You help clear the plates. The bread was untouched, the wine watered down more than usual. In the kitchen, the scullery boy is gone. "Sent home," says the steward, but his tone is flat. That night you sleep with your cloak over your nose. You don't know if that helps, but you do it anyway. Historians still argue whether jesters were spared or sacrificed during plague outbreaks. Some writings suggest they were treated as disposable performing for isolated nobles until they too fell ill. Others hint they were moved out of court for safety because the laughter they brought was too valuable to risk. You don't feel valuable. You feel watched. You cough again, just twice. You wrap a cloth around your mouth before returning to the hall. No one notices. They only notice if you're not funny. The next night you slip during your routine. You fall harder than usual. Your knee hits stone. A rib twinges. You lie there trying to breathe, trying not to let the wheeze sound real, trying to make the audience think it's part of the act. They laugh. You wheeze again, more laughter. You push yourself up and bow. They applaud. A fringe tidbit. In one northern court, a jester was buried in secret when he collapsed mid-rhyme. The Lord reportedly ordered a replacement the next morning, saying, "Laughter does not rest. You walk back to your room slower than usual. The corridors feel longer, the torches dimmer. You pass the chapel. It smells of smoke and damp wood. Inside, the priest kneels alone. He doesn't see you. He's coughing too. You say nothing. Fools aren't for prayers, just for punchlines. You lie awake most of the night, not from pain, from silence. The rain has stopped, and the quiet feels heavier than the roof above. The jingle of your bells feels louder today, not in volume, but in presence, like every step you take leaves a trail behind you. You feel them even when they're not moving, hanging from your cap, tugging at your ears. A reminder. You're called early before sunup, not to perform, to assist. Something happened in the West Tower. No one says what. You arrive to find the doors closed and a guard posted. A mop is handed to you, a bucket already filled. The floor inside is stained. You don't ask why. You don't joke. Not here. You mop. Slowly. The smell is unmistakable. Sick. Iron. Something worse behind it. You find a torn piece of cloth lace white, turned brown. You drop it in the bucket and keep going. When you leave, no one meets your eyes. Back in the main hall, the steward tells you to prepare something cheerful for the evening. There's tension, he says. The Lord wants noise. You nod. You feel the bruise on your knee from 2 nights ago. Still tender. You recite your rhymes in the stable yard. The horses ignore you. The stable master does not. You're louder than a wedding bell, he mutters. You take that as a compliment. The evening arrives with slow ceremony. The table is less full again. No guests, no cousin. Even the chaplain is missing. But Lord Evermon is there. His eyes look duller, his hands tighter on his goblet. You're introduced with less flair than usual. Fool is all he says. You take the floor. You begin with a fable. A rabbit who outsmarts a wolf by pretending to be deaf. Not funny, really, but light. It draws a smile. Then a tale of a farmer whose chickens learned to count. The noblewoman snorts. That's enough. You try a pantomime of a duel between a spoon and a fork. It plays well. Someone claps twice, but no one's laughing loud. The air is off. Even the dogs are quiet. You bow, you step back. Evermon gestures. You remain near the door. Later, you're sent to the cellar. There's a task waiting. A prisoner, a thief, you're told, tried to steal the steward's purse. They want you to cheer him up. It's not a joke. They expect you to entertain him. So you do. You descend with a torch and a lute, missing 2 strings. He sits on the floor, chained at the ankle, eyes sunken. You strum. You sing softly. You make up a song about a rat that became a baker. He doesn't laugh, but he doesn't look away. Afterward, you leave the lute behind. It belongs down here more than you do. A mainstream fact, jesters were sometimes used to lift spirits in dungeons or sick rooms, though this was rarely effective. Their presence was often seen as a ritual gesture, an attempt to deny fear through forced levity. You return to your room. You pass the laundry maid coughing into a cloth. She hides it quickly. You don't comment. You undress slowly. One of your bells is missing again. You don't replace it. The silence in that note feels earned. Historians still argue whether jesters were truly immune to punishment. Some records paint them as protected sacred. Others note fools whipped for missteps, beaten for poor timing, imprisoned for laughter that came too late. You dream of the prisoner, of a rat with flour-dusted paws, of a lute string snapping under tension. The next day, the steward finds you in the kitchen. You're to serve as cupbearer tonight, he says. That's not normal. You're not a servant. You're not a knight's page. But you nod. No protest, no objection. You practice your bow. You polish the goblet rim. That night you stand at Lord Everman's side. You pour wine. You step back. You smile. No rhyme, no jest. Just presence. Sometimes that's what they want. Just someone to hold the space between silences. A fringe tidbit. In 13th century Denmark, a fool named Mikkel was employed not for laughter, but simply to be in the room with the grieving queen after her son's death. He was told to speak only if spoken to. He remained silent for 3 years. You wonder how long you could last like that. No jokes, no voice, just bells, and eyes, and waiting. Your breath rises in clouds as you step into the courtyard. The air is sharp, still damp from last night's rain. The ground crunches under your boots, frost thin and fragile like the mood in the manor. Today is your day off, or what passes for one. It happens once every 4 weeks provided no guests arrive, no nobles demand distraction, and no livestock escapes from the lower pastures. You don't mark it on a calendar. There is no calendar in your room. You remember by the dull ache in your thighs and the sudden absence of commands before dawn. Still, you don't sleep in. No one lets you. You're summoned to the village, not formally. A kitchen maid whispers that the steward wishes you to attend the market, for onions and for show. So you go, in full costume. The walk is long and wet. Your boots leak. The bells on your hat freeze into dull little stones of ice. Every step sounds like coins clinking underwater. You pass the road marker carved with moss-covered letters. Hartwell, 3 miles. The village lies just past the bend in the road down a slope of ruts and cart grooves. It smells different here. Smoke from damp thatch, sour yeast, unwashed wool. You reach the market square. It's not large, a few carts, some women selling root vegetables, a boy with pigeons in a cage. You stand out instantly, children laugh and point. You jingle on purpose just once. A man with a boiled nose gestures toward a half barrel. Do something. You juggle 3 turnips. They clap. You pretend one is a nobleman and give it a high voice. They laugh harder. For a moment, you forget the cold. Then a stone hits your side. Not hard, but clear. A teenage boy grins and holds up another. You don't move. You let it hit. Not because you're brave, because it's your role. You're a fool. And this is your day off. A mainstream fact. In medieval society, jesters were sometimes sent into towns or marketplaces to represent the manor or household effectively functioning as both entertainment and a public distraction. They were recognized and rarely respected by the local populace. You purchase the onions and return carrying a sack over your shoulder like a penance. The steward nods at your arrival, doesn't speak. You find a dry corner of the stable wall to sit. You chew a raw carrot from your sleeve. Your fingers are cracked at the knuckles. The sky turns gray too early. You're summoned again. This time not for performance. A procession is forming. Not a festival, a punishment. A servant stole a ring, caught by a groom. They're going to march him through the manor for show, and you're to walk ahead of him. Play a tune, smile, make it amusing. You want to say no. You almost do. Then the steward frowns, and you nod. You find a flute in the stores. You haven't played in months. The wind whistles through it with reluctance. The servant walks behind you in stocks, barefoot, muddy, face down. You lead the procession around the courtyard twice. The nobles watch from windows. Some sip wine. Some laugh. You play a silly melody about frogs. The bells on your cap jingle with every step. It feels wrong, because it is, but no one stops it. Historians still argue whether jesters had any agency during public spectacles. Some documents claim they protested certain punishments. Others describe them mocking victims with exaggerated flair. You say nothing. After the march, the servant is led away. You return your flute to the storeroom. You wash your hands in a cold basin. The water stings. The rest of the evening is quiet. No guests. No performances. Just silence and torchlight flickering on wet walls. A fringe tidbit. In 15th century Scotland, a fool named Tamlin refused to sing during a flogging. He was fined a week's meals and made to wear a sheep's stomach as a hat for a month. Records say he never protested again. You lie in bed. You wrap your cloak around your legs. The bells are silent, hanging on the wall. You stare at them until you fall asleep. You dream of turnips with noble voices, and footsteps behind you, always behind. The bells ring early today, not yours the chapel's. 3 long tones, heavier than usual, echoing through stone and morning fog. You stir on your straw pile and wait for the 4th. It doesn't come. You sit up. The air is damp. Your blanket smells of ash and onions. A mouse darts from beneath your boot and vanishes through a crack in the wall. Something's off. You feel it before you see it. Outside your door, the corridor is still. No footsteps, no shouting, no spilled bucket clatter. You hear whispers, but they're far away, buried under layers of stone. When you arrive in the great hall, it's mostly empty. Only Lord Everman is present, seated at the long table alone. He drinks something red and thick from a clay mug. His beard is unkempt. His boots are still muddy. He looks at you. "You'll perform for the Queen today," he says. You blink. Not a queen. The Queen. She's here. Unexpected. Unscheduled. You feel the pressure in your chest. Which? Peace. "Shall I prepare, my lord?" He shrugs. "She'll tell you what she likes. She always does." You're dismissed with a flick of his hand. Back in your quarters you pace. You sort through your routines. None seem fitting. You tie your belt tighter. You polish your shoes. You scrub your face with cold water and pick straw from your hair. You rehearse in whispers. 3 rhymes. 2 stories. A juggling bit with bread rolls. All feel stale. Useless. By mid-afternoon, the castle is bustling again. She arrives with 4 carriages and twice as many guards. Her cloak is black. Her gloves are gray. She wears no crown. She doesn't need one. You don't see her until supper. You're summoned as the second course is cleared. You walk slowly into the hall. She sits at the head of the table. Evermon is 2 seats away. Everyone else sits lower. You bow low. She doesn't speak. She just tilts her head. Evermon gestures. Well, go on. You begin with a small rhyme about a miller and a duck. It's short, safe, neutral. She doesn't react. You try a second piece, a tale about a baker whose pies grew legs. It earns a few laughs, not hers. Then she speaks. Do you have the one about the cook's cat? You hesitate. Yes, Your Grace. It's a story you usually reserve for children. A tabby that steals stew, burns its whiskers, and ends up managing the kitchen. She nods. That one. So you tell it. All of it. With motions, with sound effects, with a high-pitched cat voice. At the end, she smiles. Once, you feel like you've climbed a hill barefoot. Evermon claps softly. The others follow. She raises a hand. The room stills. She looks at you. You'll do it again tomorrow. You bow. You leave the hall. You sit in the corridor until your knees stop shaking. A mainstream fact. Queens and noblewomen often had preferred jesters or comic routines. Some fools gained brief favor at court simply by performing a single beloved story again and again, even for years. You don't eat that night. Too nervous, too full of thoughts. You lie awake watching your breath puff in the dark. Tomorrow again. Same story. Same voice. Same ending. The following day you perform the cat story twice. Once at dinner. Once in the garden by request. She brings a lapdog that watches you the entire time. You keep your distance. By nightfall, the servants begin whispering. She wants to take you with her. To court. To the capital. You're not told directly. You overhear it. In the scullery. In the hallway. In the kitchen yard. The steward passes you a nod. The stable master doesn't look at you at all. You try to sleep. You don't. You rise before the bell. You walk the perimeter of the manor twice thinking. trying to imagine the capital, a larger stage, a warmer room, better food, or just different dangers. Historians still argue whether royal jesters enjoyed more protection than rural ones. Some letters suggest they had rooms, meals, even small salaries. Others indicate they were watched more closely, punished more often, and discarded more quietly. You wouldn't know. You've never been further than Hartwell. On the third night, you're summoned to the Queen's antechamber. She's seated by the fire, alone. She asks, "Do you enjoy your work?" You hesitate. "Yes, Your Grace." Even when they mock you, you nod. Even when you're tired, another nod. She studies you, then says, "You may remain here, if you wish." No offer, no order, just permission. You bow deeply. "Thank you." You're dismissed. You walk back slowly. Your room feels different, like it might not be yours for long, or maybe it always was. A fringe tidbit. In 12th century Aragon, a queen's favorite fool was given a velvet cloak and permission to ride behind her carriage. He fell ill and died within a week. His replacement lasted 6 years, but never rode in velvet. You fold your cloak over your feet. You think about the cat story. You wonder how many more times you'll tell it. You wake to rain again. Not the hard pounding kind that floods the courtyard, but the quiet drizzle that seeps in through the cracks, slow and patient. You wrap your cloak tighter, careful not to tug the fraying seam at the shoulder. You don't fix it. You'll need the thread later. The room feels smaller today. Not colder, just closer. You wash your face in the same basin. The water smells of stone. You dry with the inside of your sleeve. The cloth is stiff, but it works. They don't summon you this morning. So you wait. No footsteps. No knock. You sit on the edge of the straw and listen. Far away, a cartwheel squeals. Nearer, the kitchen maid hums a broken tune. You count the notes. 7. Pause. 3. Repeat. The door opens without a knock. It's the steward. You've been moved. You blink. Where to South Pantry? The Queen prefers quiet halls. You gather your things. They fit in your hands. Your costume folded, your cup, your second-best belt, and the pouch with the broken bell. The South Pantry is smaller, but it's drier. The stone is smoother. No mold, no draft. You lay your cloak down first, then the straw, then the costume, in that order. Then you sit and wait. You perform only once that night, in the garden. Again the cat story. Again the same lines. Again the same laugh. She asks no questions, just claps. Once, then you're dismissed. The Queen stays 3 more days. You perform twice more. A song, a short play with a wooden spoon and an old shoe. She smiles at the spoon. On the final day, you are not called. By nightfall, the carriages are packed. You stand at the window watching the guards mount up. The Queen passes without looking up. No farewell, no offer, no glance. A mainstream fact. Royal visitors rarely left gifts or farewells to court jesters unless they were in long-term service. Most performances were treated as brief amusements like firelight or music pleasant but forgettable. You return to the south pantry. You don't unpack. There's nothing left to unpack. Just cloth and weight. The next morning, the steward appears again. "You'll perform tonight," he says. "Anything particular?" "The Queen's favorite." "Of course." You nod. You rehearse it. Again. The rhythm, the beat, the squeaky voice for the cat. You tell it to the stable door. It doesn't laugh. You tell it to the laundry girl. She does. Softly. You go on stage that night like always. It's different now. Not louder, not grander, just clearer. They know what to expect. You do too. Evermon looks tired. The table is half full. The hall echoes more. Still they laugh. At the right lines. At the expected spots. They clap. You bow. You step back. They don't ask for a second act. You return to your room. The bell from your cap rolls out of your pouch. You leave it there. It doesn't ring anymore. Historians still argue whether repetition dulled or protected a jester's performance. Some believed familiar routines comforted court audiences. Others believed it was a sign the fool had run out of wit and that was dangerous. You don't feel in danger. Not now. Just quiet. You sit in the pantry. You hum the Queen's tune. 7 notes. Pause. 3. Again. A fringe tidbit. A jester once performed the same joke about a merchant and his goat for 13 years at the king's supper table. The king laughed every time. On the 14th year, the jester added 1 word. The king stopped laughing. The jester vanished. You won't add any words. Not yet. Not here. You lie on the straw, face to the wall. The spoon lies beside you. The shoe under the bed, and the broken bell still near the door. You'll fix it. Tomorrow. Maybe. The great hall is warm tonight. Not from laughter, but from too many candles and a roaring hearth that's been overfed with dry logs. Smoke coils around the beams. The scent of tallow lingers thick as stew. You stand to the side waiting. Your cue hasn't come yet. The guests are late. The Lord is drinking early, and the priests seated nearest the fire are already fanning themselves with their sleeves. You shift in place. Your costume itches under your arms. The hem drags behind you no matter how many times you shorten it. The bells are duller this week, not by accident. You stuffed their cavities with wax and dirt to muffle their noise. The steward noticed. He hasn't said anything. But he noticed. Tonight's performance is delicate. There's a bishop visiting. Not the friendly one who hums during prayers. This one frowns at bread that's too crusty. You're warned no rhymes about saints, no jokes about wine, and no mention of cats. You don't ask why. You already know. You've had to rewrite your act. It's thinner now, less edge, more flattery. You begin with a dance. It's quiet. Your steps echo too clearly on the stone. You feel the eyes on you less amused, more waiting. A pause before judgment. You perform a tale about a pig that dreams of flight. It's safe, almost meaningless. That's the goal. The bishop doesn't laugh, but he doesn't leave either. You count that as success. A mainstream fact. Medieval church officials often regarded jesters with suspicion. Though tolerated at court, fools were seen as vulgar distractions from divine order. Some bishops banned jesters from feasts entirely. Others insisted they perform with modesty and silence an impossible contradiction. You close with a rhyme about a candle that wouldn't go out. One priest nods. The others remain still. You bow. Lord Evermon waves his goblet. You're dismissed, but not released. You're asked to stay visible, to remain on hand. You lean against a column. You smile when anyone glances your way. You are furniture, with bells. When the guests leave, you gather plates. You mop a spill. You catch a falling candlestick before it cracks. No one thanks you. You collect your small bowl of soup and eat by the scullery door. The broth is watery, but warm. Later that night, you rehearse a new piece, something quiet, minimal movement. You found that simpler gestures do better in small rooms. The performance hall is shrinking, not literally, but in tone. Everything feels closer, lower, quieter. Even the laughter. Historians still argue whether fools adjusted their acts based on court mood or just repeated what once worked. Some treatises suggest jesters were highly responsive, changing tone subject and tempo based on audience age, rank, even weather. You've learned this is true. Rain makes them somber. Sun makes them louder. Wine makes them crueler. Tonight it rained. So you stayed slow, dry, safe. A fringe tidbit. In 14th century Prague, a jester known as Elik was forbidden from speaking during Lent. Instead, he mimed his routines using a goose feather and a wooden plank. The nobles reportedly found it more amusing than his voice. You wonder if silence would suit you. You try a few gestures in your room. An eyebrow raise, a slow shrug, a fall onto your bed with a feathered sigh. It feels like drowning in velvet. You close your eyes. You listen to the fire crackling through the walls. You hear someone coughing in the stairwell. You recognize the rhythm. It's the steward. You don't ask. You just lie still. The bells are near your feet tonight. You don't touch them. Let them rest. Tomorrow you'll try the candle story again. Maybe slower, maybe shorter, maybe funnier, or maybe not. Maybe they'll laugh, maybe they won't. Either way, the hall will still smell of wax, and the soup will still taste of smoke. The kitchen is louder than usual today. Pots clang. Knives tap against wood. Bread rises in the hearth's heat, steam curling from the edges of cracked crusts. The cooks move faster, speaking less. You stand at the wall holding a tray of raw carrots, unsure whether you're waiting to deliver them or pretend to juggle them. No one tells you. So you wait. The steward enters briefly, murmurs to the head cook, then vanishes down the corridor again. A goose squawks in the yard outside, too late for the table, too noisy for the barn. It won't last the hour. You're not asked to perform this evening, you're told. After the third course, the steward says, not before, not during. The instructions are clear, even more than usual. That means someone's nervous. That means someone important is watching. You change into your second best tunic. The patch near the hip is smaller. The red dye hasn't fully faded. The bells still work. You sit near the scullery and rehearse. Not the old rhymes. Not the candle story. Something else. something simple, a wordless piece. You tap your fingers in sequence. Left, right, left, jingle, pause. The rhythm is clean, predictable. You like that, even if they don't. When the supper bell rings, you're already at the edge of the hall. The guests are unfamiliar, not nobles, not clergy, messengers, advisors, a guard captain, the kind of people who don't laugh often. Lord Evermond speaks in short sentences. He doesn't drink. The food is quiet. No songs, no spoons tapping, just chewing and movement. When you're called forward, it's not by name, just a gesture. You step lightly, you bow, and you begin. The routine is new. You mime a ladder, climb it, fall. You mime a chicken who can't find her eggs. You pretend to lay one. They chuckle. A little. You take it. You mime a door that won't close. You lean on it. It swings. You fall again. It's enough. They're smiling now. Even Evermond. That's rare. A mainstream fact. Many jesters relied heavily on physical comedy when verbal humor risked offense. Miming, tripping, and absurd gestures were universally safer and often preferred in tense gatherings. You end with a bow. You back away. They don't clap, but they nod, and they don't send you out. So you stand by the fire. An ornament, a presence, a bell without a chime. After supper, the hall empties faster than usual. You're not dismissed, you just fade. Back to the corridor, to your room. The south pantry still smells of onions. You don't mind anymore. You sit with your knees pulled up, cloak draped over your shoulders like curtain folds. The bells are quiet. You remove your cap. You hold it in your lap. You notice how the stitching is coming loose near the left point. You'll fix it. Later. Historians still argue whether fools kept records of their acts. Few scrolls survive. Most were oral performers. Nothing written, nothing saved. When the fool died, so did the act. You've begun repeating yourself again. Not for the court. For you. In your mind. You tell the ladder joke as you fall asleep. You tell the chicken story to the wall. They land better in silence. A fringe tidbit. In 15th century Ireland, a fool named Karen wrote his jokes on sheep parchment, then burned them after each performance. He claimed memory was a better page than paper. You've never had parchment, but your memory still works, mostly. You remember the day the Queen smiled. You remember the boy in the village who threw a stone. You remember the priest who covered his laugh with a cough. You remember everything that made them laugh and every time they didn't. You lie down. The straw feels warmer than usual. Not softer, just warmer. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's the fire in the main hall seeping into the walls. Or maybe it's the stories themselves, still clinging to your sleeves, still waiting to be told again. Even if no one asks. Even if no one laughs. Morning drips in through the high, narrow window above your head. Not sunlight, just gray. The kind of color that says nothing, promises nothing, offers only another day shaped like the last. You stretch without rising. Your knees crack. Your back pulls. You stay still for a minute, counting the cobwebs in the corner. The spider that lives there hasn't moved in days. You wonder if it's dead. You don't check. There's no knock, no call, no summons. That's not good. You rise slowly, dress without thought. Tunic, tights, cap, the bells still muted with wax. You kept it that way. You walk to the kitchen, no one there. You check the scullery. Empty. Even the courtyard is still. Then you see it. A cart at the gate, covered in cloth. 2 wheels, one loose. 3 figures beside it. No horses, just silence. You don't ask. You don't want to know who's gone. You return inside. The steward finds you in the corridor by the storeroom. You'll clean the west chamber, he says. No explanation, just a bucket and a cloth. You climb the stairs. The west chamber smells of old perfume and fresh dust. The window is cracked. A pillow lies on the floor. No blood, no sign, just a chill in the fabric. You straighten the sheets. You sweep the corners. You hum to fill the space. Not a rhyme, not a joke, just sound. The work takes an hour. You say nothing when you leave. You pass the chapel on your way back. The priest stands inside, arms raised, voice flat. No one is listening, but he speaks anyway. A mainstream fact. During illness, grief, or transition, jesters were often reassigned. Their duties shifted: less performance, more service. Their roles were elastic, bending to needs. Sometimes they mopped floors. Sometimes they stood silent in corners, reminders that levity still existed even when unspoken. You spend the rest of the day in the garden, raking. The soil is damp. The leaves are heavy. No one watches. No one commands. That night, you're not asked to perform. The hall is dark. Bread is cold. Wine is scarce. Lord Evermond speaks softly to the steward, then leaves without finishing his meal. You remain at the edge of the room, waiting. Not needed. Still present. The flicker of the torches feels tired. The air tastes of iron. You return to your quarters. You unroll your cloak. You untie your cap. You lie flat, arms folded. No bells tonight. You stare at the ceiling. You wait. Historians still argue whether jesters aged out of their role or were discarded as their humor faded. Some suggest old fools became tutors, servants, or beggars. Others simply vanish from records, one name ending, no new one replacing it. You're not old. Not yet. But your steps are slower. Your words come harder. The stories sit heavier on your tongue. You practice a joke in the dark, the one about the nun and the chicken. It feels wrong. You let it fade. A fringe tidbit. In 14th century Wales, a jester named Idun performed in silence for the last 5 years of his life. When asked why, he held up a cracked lute and smiled. No one ever made him speak again. You wonder what it feels like to stop speaking, to be a jester without words, to be still, not dismissed, just finished. You close your eyes. You tell yourself one last rhyme, just for you. You whisper the last line and wait. The silence that follows is neither cold nor cruel, just full. You hear it before you see it. Voices, louder than usual, not cheerful, not angry, just present, as if the manor has remembered how to echo. You slip your cap on without tying it. The bells thud softly against your shoulders. One of them no longer moves. You don't fix it. Outside your door, the corridor is full of servants carrying chairs. A wooden bench scrapes against the floor, leaving a dark trail behind it. Someone spilled ink in the East Hall. You're not told what's happening, but you see it building. A feast. No banners, but more food. No musicians, but more guests. You're not asked to perform. You're expected to. Without rehearsal, without instruction. That's never a good sign. You dress slowly. The older tunic, the better shoes. You remove the wax from 2 bells. Just enough sound to remind them you're still here. When you enter the great hall, it's already half full. Nobles you don't recognize. Guards with cleaner boots. No queen. But her banner is tucked in the corner, folded faint. Lord Evermond sits straighter tonight, his hair oiled, his fingers tapping. He looks at you once, then not again. You're not introduced. You're simply pointed to. You begin with a bow. They don't return it. You launch into a tale, a knight, a bridge, and a barrel of eels. It gets smiles, not laughter, but not silence. You try a short rhyme, a merchant and a goat. It's old, but dependable. Someone chuckles. The steward nods. You try one more, a longer tale, about a jester, one who fakes a heart attack during a toast. You act it out. You pause, clutch your chest, stagger, fall. You wait. Silence. Then a single laugh, short, sharp, not mocking, just genuine. Evermond raises his goblet. Well timed. That's all he says. But it's enough. A mainstream fact. Fools often used feigned illness or injury in their acts. These moments served as metaphors for truth in disguise, highlighting the fragility of power, the absurdity of structure. Sometimes their jokes hit too close, other times not close enough. You rise, brush off your knees, you bow, you step back. The feast resumes. You stand near the wall. Your breathing evens out. No applause, but no rebuke. You watch the meat. The meats are richer than usual, the wine darker. You're handed a piece of crust and a small fig, a reward by their standard. You eat it slowly. You feel every bite, every grain. After the meal, you're not dismissed. You're not told anything. But you know. You've planned this. Your last joke. You walk to the side of the hall. You pick up your prop. A goblet, just like the others. You tap it gently. No one watches. You walk forward again. You drop it. It doesn't shatter. It rolls. You chase it. You fall. Deliberately. And stay there. Still. Face down. The bells ring once. Then stop. Someone coughs. No one moves. Then the steward approaches. Kneels. Get up. You don't. He touches your arm. Your eyes are open. You grin faintly. You rise slowly. You say nothing. They laugh. Uneasy. Then louder. Relieved. You bow. A fringe tidbit. In 13th century Hungary, a fool named Thomas performed his own funeral as a prank. He lay in a wooden tub, arms crossed, while monks chanted behind him. When he sat up, the Lord fainted. Tamas was flogged the next day, then asked to do it again for a visiting duke. You leave the hall, not dismissed, just done. You walk the corridor slowly. You don't return to your room. You stop in the kitchen. No one is there. You sit on the hearth. You remove your cap, place it on your knee. You stare at it, like it might speak, but it doesn't. You close your eyes. The fire pops. Someone walks past. No one stops. No one asks. And for once, you don't wait. You wake before the bell, before the clatter of buckets, before the hiss of bread ovens, before the call to prayer that usually slips through the chapel walls. The air is thick but not cold, just unmoving, like the stillness before a word you know is coming but hasn't yet been said. You dress quietly. Tunic, tights, no bells. You leave the cap on the hook. It doesn't call to you. You step into the corridor and walk the length of the manor without being noticed. Not ignored, just unseen. You pass the kitchen. The door is closed. The fire hasn't been lit. You pass the garden. The tools lie where they were dropped. The door to the chapel is open. You step inside. The priest is not preaching. He's not there. Just the altar. Just a candle flickering low, bent with melted wax. You kneel for a moment. Not in prayer. Just rest. Then you rise. Outside, the rain begins. Light. Rhythmic. You return to your room. You pack what little you have. A spoon. A folded tunic. A string with 3 knots. The broken bell. You wrap them in cloth and bind them with twine. You look once at the cap. You don't take it. When you step into the courtyard, the guards glance but don't stop you. The steward sees you from the top stair. He doesn't speak. He nods once. You nod back. Then you walk. Past the gates. Past the outer wall. Onto the road that curves toward the hills. Your boots squish in the puddles. Your cloak grows heavy. But your steps are light. You don't know where you're going, but you know you won't return. A mainstream fact. Some jesters, when no longer needed or able, simply left. There were no contracts, no ceremonies, no farewells. They vanished into roads and rivers, became stories, or were forgotten entirely. Their leaving was as quiet as their arrival had been loud. You pass a tree, bent sideways. A crow watches from a branch. You tip an invisible hat to it. It doesn't caw, but it doesn't fly away. You think of a joke, one you never told, about a fool who walks until he forgets what he was running from. You smile. You don't say it aloud. The sun breaks for a moment, just enough to show the road ahead. You keep walking. You hum a line from a rhyme. Something about a miller and a barrel of fish. You let the line fade before the punchline. Not every joke needs an end. Not every story needs a laugh. A fringe tidbit. In a record from 1294, a fool called Nellon was last seen walking south on a Roman road outside Dunfield. He left his costume behind, A shepherd found it weeks later folded beneath a rock, dry despite the rain. No one ever claimed it. You pause at the fork in the path. One way leads to Hartwell, one leads elsewhere. You choose the second, without thought, without pause. You walk until the rain stops, and then you walk farther. Your boots sink. Your hands are warm. You carry no banner, no tools, no names, just steps, and a memory of bells. They don't ring anymore, but you still hear them, in the back of your mind, as if the costume you left behind walks with you. Quiet, but never gone. The road beneath your feet softens with each step. The sounds around you fall away, the wet rustle of trees, the distant chatter of birds, even the soft brush of wind across stone. You move more slowly now. Your arms hang loose. The weight is lighter. The clouds overhead thin, letting a pale wash of silver light fall across the ground in gentle strips. You breathe. Inhale damp earth. Exhale the last joke you never told. You rest beneath a tree. No audience. No stage. Just quiet. The kind that doesn't demand a smile or a bow. The kind that stays. Your body settles into stillness. The kind that doesn't ache. The kind that holds. In the distance a bell rings. Not yours, but familiar. Its echo fades slowly, like laughter behind a closing door. And as your eyes close, the sky stays still. The stories fade. The voices sleep. And all that remains is breath rhythm and the quiet hum of a world that no longer needs you to be funny. You rest. You sleep. And nothing hurts.